The prophecies in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 have long fascinated theologians and believers, describing a dramatic future conflict where a coalition of nations, led by Gog from the land of Magog, attacks Israel. Among the nations listed is Persia, widely recognized as modern-day Iran. In 2025, the strengthening strategic partnership between Russia and Iran has prompted some to draw parallels with this ancient prophecy, particularly within Christian eschatological frameworks. This analysis explores the historical and theological foundations of Ezekiel's prophecy, its potential connections to the Russia-Iran alliance, and the broader geopolitical context of 2025, emphasizing a cautious approach to linking current events with biblical prophecy. The prophecies found in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39, written around the 6th century BCE, describe a coalition of nations led by Gog, identified as the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, from the land of Magog, who orchestrates an attack on Israel in the latter days. The coalition includes Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah, nations that scholars have attempted to identify with modern states. The prophecy culminates in divine intervention, where God protects Israel and destroys the invading forces, demonstrating his sovereignty. In Ezekiel's time, these nations were significant players in the ancient Near East. Persia, corresponding to modern Iran, was a rising power that would later conquer Babylon and facilitate the return of Jewish exiles under Cyrus the Great, as recorded in Ezra chapter 1 verse 1 to 4. Cush, often associated with regions south of Egypt, such as modern Ethiopia or Sudan, and Put, possibly linked to Libya, were African territories with historical ties to the broader Mediterranean world. Gomer and Beth Togarmah are less certain, but are frequently connected to regions in modern Turkey or the Caucasus, possibly including parts of Armenia or southern Russia. The identification of Magog, Meshech, and Tubal has been particularly contentious. In ancient Jewish tradition, Magog was associated with the Scythians, a nomadic people north of the Black Sea. In modern Christian eschatology, particularly within dispensationalism, Magog is often linked to Russia due to its geographical position, from the far north, and its historical role as a major power. Meshech and Tubal, sometimes associated with regions in modern Turkey or Russia, are seen by some as further evidence of a northern coalition. However, these identifications are not universally accepted, with some scholars arguing they refer to ancient Anatolian tribes unrelated to modern nations. Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 are central to Christian eschatology, particularly in discussions of the end times. Different theological traditions offer varied interpretations. 1. Literal interpretation. Dispensationalist theologians, popular in evangelical circles, view Ezekiel 38 to 39 as a prophecy of a literal future event, likely occurring during the tribulation period before Christ's second coming. They identify Russia as Magog, Iran as Persia, and other nations like Turkey or Sudan as part of the coalition. This view sees the 2025 Russia-Iran alliance as a potential precursor to this prophecy. 2. Symbolic interpretation. Other theologians interpret the passage allegorically, seeing Gog and Magog as symbols of evil forces opposing God's people. In this view, the specific nations are less important than the broader theme of God's victory over evil, applicable across history. 3. Historical fulfillment. A minority perspective suggests the prophecy was fulfilled in ancient times, possibly during the Maccabean period or another conflict involving Israel's neighbors. This view is less common among those who see Ezekiel's prophecy as future-oriented. The literal interpretation is particularly relevant to discussions of the Russia-Iran alliance, as it directly connects ancient nations to modern geopolitical actors. However, the Bible cautions against definitive predictions about the timing of such events, urging believers to approach prophecy with humility. In 2025, the Russia-Iran alliance has gained significant attention due to the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement signed on January 17, 2025, by Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian. This 20-year agreement enhances cooperation in military, economic, and political spheres, but does not constitute a formal military alliance requiring mutual defense. The partnership has deepened since Iran began supplying drones for Russia's conflict in Ukraine, including the Shahed 136 and support for a drone manufacturing facility in Russia. The alliance is further highlighted by the ongoing Iran-Israel conflict, which escalated on June 13, 2025, when Israel launched strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities in Bushehr, Natanz, Isfahan, and Arak. Russia has condemned these actions, warning of a potential catastrophe due to the presence of Russian specialists at Bushehr, but has refrained from direct military involvement. This cautious stance reflects Russia's strategic balancing act, as it seeks to maintain influence in the Middle East without escalating into a broader conflict with Israel or the United States. The Russia-Iran alliance in 2025 presents intriguing parallels to Ezekiel's prophecy, particularly with Iran's clear identification as Persia and Russia's potential association with Magog. Some Christian commentators on platforms like X have drawn these connections, viewing the alliance as a sign of the end times. However, several factors suggest the current situation does not fully align with Ezekiel's description. Lack of a full coalition. Ezekiel lists multiple nations, including Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah, which are not clearly part of the Russia-Iran alliance in 2025. While Turkey has complex ties with both Russia and Iran, it is not formally aligned in a coalition against Israel. Conflict dynamics. In Ezekiel, the coalition attacks Israel, whereas in 2025, Iran is the target of Israeli strikes, with Russia offering diplomatic rather than military support. Prophetic timing. The prophecy specifies the latter days, a term open to interpretation, and the Bible emphasizes that only God knows the timing of such events. Despite these differences, the strengthening Russia-Iran partnership, combined with regional tensions, fuels speculation about its prophetic significance. The prophecy's emphasis on God's protection of Israel offers a theological anchor, suggesting that any coalition against Israel would ultimately fail. The prophecies in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 provide a rich historical and theological framework for understanding potential connections to modern events. The Russia-Iran alliance in 2025, while significant, does not fully match the prophecy's description due to the absence of a broader coalition and differing conflict dynamics. Theologically, the passage underscores God's sovereignty and protection of Israel, offering hope to believers regardless of how events unfold. As we explore further parts of this analysis, we will examine the current geopolitical landscape and potential future scenarios, maintaining a balanced perspective on the interplay between prophecy and reality. The year 2025 has witnessed significant geopolitical developments in the Middle East and Eurasia, with the Russia-Iran alliance emerging as a focal point for both political analysts and students of biblical prophecy. On January 17, 2025, Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian signed the Iranian-Russian Treaty on Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, a 20-year agreement aimed at deepening cooperation in military, economic, and political spheres. This treaty, ratified between April and June 2025, has coincided with heightened regional tensions, particularly the Iran-Israel war that began on June 13, 2025. While the alliance has strengthened ties between Moscow and Tehran, its cautious nature and the absence of a full military coalition raise questions about its alignment with the prophecy of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. This section explores the current geopolitical context, integrating Christian theology, ancient history, and contemporary analysis to assess the potential connections between these events and biblical prophecy. The Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement, signed in Moscow, represents a significant milestone in Russia-Iran relations. The treaty enhances military and defense cooperation, including joint exercises and information exchange, and includes clauses preventing either nation from allowing its territory to be used against the other. However, it explicitly does not constitute a military alliance, as it lacks provisions for mutual defense. This distinction is critical, as it underscores Russia's reluctance to commit militarily to Iran's defense, particularly in the context of the 2025 Iran-Israel conflict. The alliance has been driven by mutual strategic interests. For Russia, Iran has become a vital partner in countering Western sanctions and supporting its military efforts in Ukraine. Since 2022, Iran has supplied Russia with drones, such as the Shahed 136, and assisted in establishing a drone manufacturing facility in Russia. Iran has also shared expertise in evading sanctions, bolstering Russia's economic resilience. In return, Russia has provided Iran with economic support and access to advanced weaponry, including potential missile technology, further solidifying their partnership. The outbreak of the Iran-Israel war on June 13, 2025, marked a significant escalation in Middle Eastern tensions. Israel launched preemptive strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities at Bushehr, Natanz, Isfahan, and Arak, citing concerns over Iran's nuclear ambitions. These attacks damaged critical infrastructure and resulted in significant casualties, prompting Iran to retaliate with missile and drone strikes. Russia's response has been vocal but restrained. Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova condemned Israel's actions, warning of a potential catastrophe due to the presence of Russian specialists at Bushehr. President Putin echoed these sentiments, describing U.S. support for Israel as unprovoked aggression during a meeting with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi on June 23, 2025. Despite these condemnations, Russia has not provided direct military support to Iran, reflecting a strategic calculus to avoid entanglement in a broader conflict with Israel or the United States. Analysts suggest that Russia's lie in its ongoing war in Ukraine and maintaining relations with Gulf states, which are wary of a stronger Iran. The loss of Syria as an ally, following the collapse of the Assad regime in December 2024, has further strained Russia's regional influence, making it cautious about risking further losses by fully backing Iran. From a Christian theological perspective, the Russia-Iran alliance in 2025 has sparked significant interest among those studying Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39. This prophecy describes a coalition of nations, led by Gog from the land of Magog, that attacks Israel in the latter days. Persia, widely recognized as modern Iran, is explicitly named as a member of this coalition, alongside Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah. Some dispensationalist theologians associate Magog with Russia, citing its northern geographical position and historical role as a major power, and view the current alliance as a potential propheside to the prophesied conflict. However, several factors suggest that the current situation does not fully align with Ezekiel's prophecy. First, the prophecy depicts the coalition attacking Israel, whereas in 2025, Iran is the target of Israeli strikes, with Russia offering only diplomatic support. Second, the broader coalition described in Ezekiel, including nations like Cush and Gomer, is not evident in the current Russia-Iran partnership. While Turkey maintains complex relations with both Russia and Iran, it is not part of a formal anti-Israel coalition. Third, the prophecy's timing in the latter days remains ambiguous, and the Bible cautions against definitive predictions, as seen in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, where Jesus states, "But about that day or hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." Theological interpretations of Ezekiel 38 and 39 vary widely. Literalists expect a future conflict involving specific nations, while symbolic interpreters view the passage as representing broader spiritual battles between good and evil. Historical interpretations suggest the prophecy may have been fulfilled in ancient times, though this view is less common among those anticipating a future fulfillment. The Russia-Iran alliance, while intriguing, must be approached with humility, as premature conclusions can lead to misinterpretation. Historically, Persia was a dominant power in the ancient Near East, known for its role in the Achaemenid Empire, which facilitated the return of Jewish exiles under Cyrus the Great. In Ezekiel's time, Persia was emerging as a significant force, making its inclusion in the prophecy noteworthy. Magog, Meshech, and Tubal, associated with Gog, are less clearly identified. Ancient Jewish sources linked Magog to the Scythians, nomadic tribes north of the Black Sea, while modern dispensationalists often associated with Russia. These identifications remain debated, with some scholars arguing that Ezekiel's prophecy refers to ancient Anatolian tribes rather than modern nations. The Russia-Iran alliance in 2025 represents a significant geopolitical development, driven by mutual interests in countering Western influence and enhancing military cooperation. While it has sparked interest among those studying Ezekiel's prophecy, the current situation marked by Iran's defensive posture and Russia's cautious response does not fully align with the biblical description of a coalition attacking Israel. Theologically, the alliance serves as a reminder of the need for discernment and humility when interpreting prophecy, trusting in God's sovereignty as events unfold. As the Middle East remains volatile, the Russia-Iran partnership will continue to be a focal point for both geopolitical and theological analysis. The prophecy in Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 foretells a coalition of nations, led by Gog from the land of Magog, attacking Israel in the latter days. Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 16. Persia, widely recognized as modern Iran, is explicitly named. Among the coalition members, alongside Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Thagara. In 2025, the strategic partnership between Russia and Iran has prompted some Christian theologians, particularly those with a dispensationalist perspective, to explore potential parallels with this ancient prophecy. This section examines the similarities and differences between Ezekiel's vision and the current geopolitical landscape, integrating Christian theology, ancient history, and contemporary analysis to provide a nuanced understanding of the Russia-Iran alliance's prophetic significance. Ezekiel's prophecy lists several nations, with Persia being the most straightforward to identify as modern Iran. Historically, Persia was a dominant power in the ancient Near East, known for its role in the Achaemenid Empire, which facilitated the return of Jewish exiles under Cyrus the Great, Ezra chapter 1 verse 1 to 4. Iran's inclusion in the prophecy aligns seamlessly with its modern geopolitical role, particularly its tensions with Israel. The identification of Magog, Meshech, and Tubal is more contentious. Ancient Jewish sources, such as Josephus, associated Magog with the Scythians, nomadic tribes north of the Black Sea. In contemporary Christian eschatology, particularly within dispensationalism, Magog is often linked to Russia due to its geographical position from the far north. Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 15, and its historical and modern role as a global power. Meshech and Tubal, sometimes associated with regions in modern Turkey or southern Russia, are seen by some as further evidence of a northern coalition led by Russia. However, these identifications are debated, with some scholars arguing they refer to ancient Anatolian tribes unrelated to modern nations. Other nations in the prophecy include Cush, often associated with regions south of Egypt, such as modern Ethiopia or Sudan. Put, possibly linked to Libya or parts of North Africa. Gomer, frequently connected to modern Turkey or parts of the Caucasus. Beth Togarmah, potentially Turkey, Armenia, or Turkish-speaking regions in Central Asia. These identifications, while speculative, are central to discussions about whether the Russia-Iran alliance could form part of the prophesied coalition. The Russia-Iran alliance in 2025, formalized through the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement signed on January 17, 2025, by Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, presents several similarities with Ezekiel's prophecy. 1. Iran as Persia. Iran's clear identification as Persia aligns directly with the prophecy's inclusion of Persia in the coalition. Iran's ongoing hostility toward Israel, particularly in the context of the 2025 Iran-Israel war, mirrors the antagonistic role described in Ezekiel. 2. Russia's potential role as Magog. The association of Magog with Russia, though debated, is supported by Russia's northern geographical position and its strategic partnership with Iran. The treaty enhances military cooperation, including joint exercises and information exchange, which some see as a step toward a broader coalition. 3. Geopolitical tensions. The latter days in Ezekiel's prophecy suggest a period of global unrest. The 2025 geopolitical landscape, marked by the Iran-Israel conflict and Russia's efforts to counter Western influence, could be seen as setting the stage for such a coalition. Some Christian commentators on X have highlighted these tensions as prophetic signs. Despite these similarities, significant differences suggest the current situation does not fully align with Ezekiel's prophecy. 1. Conflict dynamics. Ezekiel describes a coalition attacking Israel, whereas in 2025, Iran is defending against Israeli strikes on its nuclear facilities at Bushehr, Natanz, Isfahan, and Arak, which began on June 13, 2025. Russia has condemned these actions, but has not provided military support, reflecting the absence of a mutual defense clause in their treaty. 2. Incomplete coalition. Ezekiel's prophecy includes nations like Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah, which are not clearly part of the Russia-Iran alliance. Turkey has complex relations with Russia and Iran, cooperating in some contexts, but competing in others. Sudan has seen Russian interest in establishing a naval base, but no formal alliance exists. Libya is a contested region with Russia, Turkey, and Iran supporting different factions, but no unified coalition against Israel has emerged. 3. Prophetic timing. The latter days remain ambiguous, and the Bible cautions against predicting the timing of prophetic events. The current alliance, while significant, lacks the scale and intent described in Ezekiel. Theologically, Ezekiel's prophecy is interpreted in various ways. Literal interpretation. Dispensationalists expect a future conflict involving specific nations, with Russia and Iran as key players. The 2025 alliance is seen by some as a precursor, though not a fulfillment of this event. Symbolic interpretation. Others view Gog and Magog as symbols of evil forces opposing God's people, applicable across history rather than tied to specific modern nations. Historical fulfillment. A minority perspective suggests the prophecy was fulfilled in ancient times, possibly during the Maccabean period, though this is less common among those anticipating a future event. Historically, Persia's role in biblical times as a major power aligns with Iran's current regional influence. The Scythians, potentially linked to Magog, were known for their military prowess, paralleling Russia's modern military capabilities. However, the absence of a clear coalition involving Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah in 2025 complicates direct comparisons. The Russia-Iran alliance in 2025 shares some similarities with Ezekiel's prophecy, particularly Iran's role as Persia and Russia's potential association with Magog. However, the absence of a full coalition, differing conflict dynamics, and Russia's cautious stance suggests the current situation is not a direct fulfillment of the prophecy. Theologically, the alliance invites reflection on God's sovereignty and the need for humility in interpreting prophecy. As geopolitical tensions persist, the Russia-Iran partnership remains a focal point for both eschatological and strategic analysis, encouraging believers to approach such connections with discernment and hope in God's ultimate plan. The strategic partnership between Russia and Iran in 2025, formalized through the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement signed on January 17, 2025, has ignited theological discussions within Christian communities, particularly in light of Ezekiel's prophecy of Gog and Magog. This prophecy describes a coalition of nations, including Persia, led by Gog from Magog, attacking Israel in the latter days. While some Christians view the Russia-Iran alliance as a potential precursor to this event, others urge caution, emphasizing the complexity of interpreting prophecy. This section explores the theological implications of this alliance, weaving together Christian theology, ancient history, and contemporary analysis to highlight its significance for believers in 2025. Christian theology regards biblical prophecy as a divine revelation of God's plan for humanity, particularly concerning the end times. Ezekiel chapters 38 and 39 are central to eschatological discussions, portraying a future conflict where God intervenes to protect Israel, demonstrating his sovereignty and faithfulness. The prophecy's mention of Persia aligns with Iran's modern role, and some identify Magog with Russia, citing its northern position relative to Israel-David Jeremiah blog. However, interpretations vary widely. Dispensationalists, who take a literal approach, see the prophecy as predicting a specific future event involving nations like Russia and Iran, potentially unfolding in 2025 or beyond. They view the current alliance as a foreshadowing of this conflict, though not its full fulfillment. Conversely, amillennialists and other theological traditions interpret the passage symbolically, viewing Gog and Magog as representations of evil forces opposing God's people across history. The Bible's warning against predicting the timing of such events underscores the need for humility. As noted by Russell Moore, who cautions against tying prophecy to contemporary events in ways that foster fear or cynicism in Christianity today. Historically, Persia played a significant role in biblical narratives. Under Cyrus the Great, Persia facilitated the return of Jewish exiles to Jerusalem, but later periods saw tensions, as reflected in prophecies like Jeremiah chapter 49 verses 34 to 39, which foretold Elam's rise and fall. This dual role ally and adversary parallels Iran's modern relationship with Israel, marked by hostility and conflict, particularly in the 2025 Iran-Israel war that began on June 13, 2025, with Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. The identification of Magog with Russia, while popular among dispensationalists, is less certain. Ancient sources, such as Josephus, linked Magog to the Scythians, nomadic tribes north of the Black Sea. Modern scholars point to Russia's geographical and political alignment with the prophecy's description of a northern power. The Russia-Iran alliance, strengthened by military cooperation, including Iran's supply of drones for Russia's Ukraine conflict, fuels speculation about its prophetic significance. However, the absence of other nations like Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah in the current alliance suggests it does not fully match Ezekiel's coalition. Discover the Book Ministries. A core theological implication of the Russia-Iran alliance is the affirmation of God's sovereignty over human history. The Bible teaches that God changes times and seasons. He deposes kings and raises up others. Whether the alliance is a direct fulfillment of prophecy or a geopolitical maneuver, it operates within God's overarching plan. Ezekiel's prophecy emphasizes God's intervention to protect Israel, with the destruction of the invading coalition serving as a testament to his power. This perspective offers hope to believers, particularly in the context of 2025's volatile geopolitical landscape, marked by the Iran-Israel conflict and Russia's cautious support for Iran. The prophecy's outcome, God's victory, reassures Christians that no human alliance, however formidable, can thwart his purposes. This aligns with the broader biblical narrative, where nations like Assyria, Babylon, and Rome were used as instruments of God's judgment or redemption, only to face his judgment themselves. The Russia-Iran alliance prompts several practical responses for Christians. First, it encourages vigilance, as Jesus urged his followers to watch and pray for the signs of his return. The alignment of nations in 2025, coupled with Israel's increasing isolation and rising global anti-Semitism, may be seen as a sign of the latter days, Robert Clifton Robinson. Second, it calls for prayer, particularly for the peace of Jerusalem and for the salvation of those involved in these conflicts. The spiritual dimension of these events, potentially involving principalities and powers, underscores the need for intercession and spiritual warfare. Third, the alliance may motivate believers to share the gospel with urgency, recognizing that the end times could be near. While the Russia-Iran alliance is intriguing, Christians must approach its prophetic significance with caution. The Bible warns that no one knows the day or hour of Christ's return, and premature conclusions can lead to disillusionment, as noted by Russell Moore, Christianity Today. The current alliance, while significant, lacks the full coalition and conflict dynamics described in Ezekiel, suggesting it may be a precursor rather than a fulfillment. The Russia-Iran alliance in 2025, viewed through the lens of Christian theology, highlights God's sovereignty, the importance of discerning prophetic signs, and the hope of divine intervention. While it aligns with aspects of Ezekiel's prophecy, particularly Iran's role as Persia, its incomplete coalition and differing conflict dynamics suggest it is not a direct fulfillment. Believers are called to pray, remain vigilant, and trust in God's plan, approaching such connections with humility and faith in his ultimate victory. The Russia-Iran alliance, formalized through the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership Agreement, signed on January 17, 2025, by Russian President Vladimir Putin and Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, has emerged as a significant geopolitical development, particularly in the context of the Iran-Israel conflict that began on June 13, 2025. This alliance, while not a military pact, has deepened cooperation in military, economic, and political spheres, prompting some Christians to draw parallels with Ezekiel's prophecy of Gog and Magog. The prophecy describes a coalition led by Gog from Magog, including Persia, attacking Israel in the latter days, only to be defeated by divine intervention. Looking beyond 2025, this section explores 5 potential future scenarios for the Russia-Iran alliance, integrating Christian theology, ancient history, and contemporary analysis to assess their implications for both geopolitics and biblical prophecy. In this scenario, Russia and Iran significantly strengthen their partnership, moving beyond the current strategic framework. This could involve enhanced military cooperation, such as joint exercises, advanced weapons transfers, or even a formal mutual defense agreement. Economically, the two nations might deepen integration through energy projects, trade agreements, or joint efforts to counter Western sanctions. Politically, they could align more closely in international forums, presenting a united front against Western influence. From a prophetic perspective, a deeper alliance could be seen as a step toward forming the coalition described in Ezekiel 38 to 39, where Persia is a key member. If Russia, identified by some as Magog due to its northern position, takes a leading role, this could align with the prophecy's narrative of Gog orchestrating an attack on Israel. However, the prophecy requires a broader coalition, including nations like Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth Togarmah, which are not currently aligned with Russia and Iran. Theologically, This scenario underscores God's sovereignty over nations, as he uses them to fulfill his purposes. Believers are reminded to pray for wisdom and peace, trusting that God's plan will unfold according to his timing. In this scenario, Russia maintains its current level of engagement with Iran, providing diplomatic and economic support, but avoiding direct military involvement in conflicts like the Iran-Israel war. Russia benefits from Iran's drone technology and sanctions evasion expertise, while Iran gains from Russia's political backing and access to advanced weaponry. This cautious approach reflects Russia's strategic balancing act, as seen in its condemnation of Israeli strikes on Iran without committing troops. Prophetically, this scenario does not align closely with Ezekiel's vision, as it lacks the aggressive coalition attacking Israel. Theologically, it reflects the biblical call to watch for signs of the times without assuming every event is a direct fulfillment of prophecy. Jesus' warning that no one knows the day or hour encourages believers to focus on faithfulness and readiness rather than speculative predictions. This scenario suggests that the Russia-Iran alliance may remain a significant but non-prophetic geopolitical development in the near term. The Russia-Iran alliance could weaken or dissolve due to internal or external pressures. For instance, if Iran's regime faces significant instability or collapse, as speculated following Israeli strikes in 2025, The Guardian, Russia might distance itself to avoid association with a failing state. Alternatively, Russia's own challenges, such as economic strain or leadership changes, could lead it to prioritize other relationships, such as with China or Gulf states' Middle East Council. Prophetically, this scenario reduces the likelihood of the Ezekiel coalition forming, as Iran's role as Persia is central. Theologically, it highlights God's ability to raise and depose nations according to his will. If the alliance weakens, it may indicate that the latter days are not yet at hand, reminding believers to trust in God's timing rather than human expectations. This scenario encourages prayer for stability and the spread of the gospel in both nations. Russia and Iran could seek to include other regional players, such as Turkey, Sudan, or Libya, forming a broader anti-Western or anti-Israel bloc. Turkey has complex ties with both nations, cooperating in areas like Libya, but competing in others' Middle East Council. Sudan has seen Russian interest in naval bases foreign policy, while Libya remains a contested region. A unified coalition could emerge if shared interests, such as energy control or opposition to Israel, align. Prophetically, this scenario closely resembles Ezekiel's coalition, especially if it turns against Israel. The gathering of nations against God's people is a recurring biblical theme, and such a coalition could signal the latter days. Theologically, believers are called to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and to remain vigilant, trusting in God's protection of Israel. This scenario underscores the need for spiritual discernment and intercession. In this dramatic scenario, the Iran-Israel conflict escalates, drawing Russia into direct military involvement on Iran's side, perhaps due to a major Israeli offensive or a threat to Iran's survival. This could lead to a broader conflict involving other nations, aligning with Ezekiel's description of a coalition attacking Israel. The prophecy foretells divine intervention, with God defeating the invaders to demonstrate his power. Theologically, this scenario would be seen as a clear sign of the end times, fulfilling Ezekiel's vision. However, the Bible cautions against predicting the timing of such events, and believers must approach this possibility with humility. The assurance of God's protection of Israel offers hope, encouraging Christians to share the gospel and prepare for Christ's return. This scenario highlights the urgency of living faithfully in uncertain times. The Russia-Iran alliance's future remains uncertain, with scenarios ranging from deepening ties to potential dissolution or escalation into a prophetic conflict. While the alliance shares some similarities with Ezekiel's prophecy, particularly Iran's role as Persia, it does not yet fulfill the biblical narrative. Theologically, these scenarios remind believers of God's control over history and the need for humility in interpreting prophecy. Christians are called to pray for peace, support Israel, and share the gospel, trusting in God's promise to protect His people. The strategic partnership between Russia and Iran in 2025, while significant, presents only partial similarities with Ezekiel's prophecy of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39. Iran's role as Persia aligns with the prophecy, but the absence of a broader coalition and differing conflict dynamics suggests it is not a direct fulfillment. Theologically, this alliance highlights God's control over history, urging believers to approach prophetic connections with humility and to pray for peace, particularly for Jerusalem. The prophecy's promise of God's protection for Israel offers hope amidst global tensions. To dive deeper into how biblical prophecy intersects with today's world, subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for more thought-provoking content.